Hello guys, and welcome back. Tonight we're stepping back into the 1300s, an era of towering stone castles, flickering torchlight, and a world shaped by hierarchy, mystery, and devotion. But forget knights in shining armor for a moment. We're going to explore the lives of people behind the scenes, the servants, the suffering, the strange, and yes, even the lords burdened with power. Settle in, lie back, and drift through the cobbled halls and fields of medieval Europe. Imagine waking, not to the chime of an alarm clock, but to the shrill crow of a rooster somewhere in the mist. You blink awake in darkness. Your bed is not a mattress, not even a straw pallet, just a wool blanket spread on a wooden board or packed earth floor in a cramped, windowless room. If you're lucky, you share it with one or two others. If not, with 4 or 5. You rise quickly because hesitation invites the cold. And this isn't a gentle cold. This is the chill that seeps into your bones, curls around your spine, and bites at your fingertips. The wind creeps through every crack in the walls and rattles the wooden shutters meant to hold it back. There's no hearth here, not in the servant quarters, only the distant memory of warmth, and perhaps a few smoldering embers in the great hall above. Your first duty of the day is fire. If someone on the night shift didn't tend it well, the hearth is out, and that means flint and steel in the dark. You hunch low, fingers stiff and raw, trying to coax a reluctant flame to life. The hall must be warm when the lord and lady rise, or the steward will blame you, regardless of who was truly assigned. And the steward's punishments aren't mild. A reprimand in front of the others, a fine, a cuff to the head, a week's lost rations. When the fire's finally catching, you breathe relief, but there's no time to linger. The next task is water, always water. You grab the iron-banded wooden buckets, heavy even when empty, and make your way to the well. The well is not nearby. You must cross the outer yard, careful not to slip on the wet cobblestones or the muck left by livestock. Past the stables, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of manure and damp hay. Down the hill, across the dew-covered grass, past the frost-bitten garden plots and the rough-hewn fences, until the well finally comes into view. And then you wait your turn. There are other servants already there, from the kitchens, the scullery, the laundry, and even the armory. Everyone needs water. Some draw for drinking, others for scrubbing, some for the chamber pots that must be discreetly cleaned before the noble family's wake. You haul up the heavy rope, bucket by bucket, feeling the burn in your shoulders. You'll make the trip not once, not twice, but 6, maybe even 7 times before the sun fully rises. Back in the castle, steam curls in the kitchen, but it's not meant for you. Pottage is simmering, oats, maybe a few beans, a cut of pork if the household can afford it. You carry trays up narrow stairwells, careful not to trip. You serve bowls to the lords and ladies who sit in embroidered gowns and lined cloaks near the fire, still complaining about the morning cold. You do not speak. You do not meet their eyes. You pour watered ale into goblets and step back, hands clasped, always ready. They talk about things you cannot understand: tithes, harvests, wars, marriages, You listen only to catch the cue. Another drink, a refill, a command. And then, as quietly as you came, you disappear again. Breakfast for you? Whatever's left. Cold scraps, often gnawed by the noble children or picked over by guests. Hardened crusts of bread, fat from the stew. If you're lucky, you might find a fig or a bit of cheese. You eat quickly, standing in a corner or behind the kitchen, brushing crumbs from your tunic and hoping the steward doesn't catch you resting. Then the day truly begins. You might be sent to the laundry, a thankless job of scrubbing tunics and underclothes in near-frozen water with coarse soap. Or you might clean the latrines, known as garderobes, which empty into the moat below. The stench is overwhelming, and you're given rags to tie over your nose, not to protect your health, but to make you slightly more bearable to those around you after the task. Your hands are always raw. From the cold, from the lye soap, from scrubbing stone floors and soot-stained hearths. And when they crack and bleed, you wrap them with linen and keep working. Evenings are no better. You help prepare the main meal of the day. A feast for some, a long shift for you. You refill wine goblets, carry platters heavy with roasted game, and sweep up the bones and bread crusts tossed carelessly to the ground. Sometimes you witness laughter and song, even music and dancing, but you're never part of it. You are the shadow in the background. At night, if you're assigned to guard duty or a final round of cleaning, your day stretches past the setting sun. The great fire must be banked again, the ash cleared, the knives cleaned, the doors barred, and only then do you slip back into your makeshift bed, exhausted, shivering, and knowing it begins again in mere hours. There are no holidays for servants, only holy days when work becomes slightly different. You do not read, you do not write, you do not dream, because dreaming is a luxury, and your body is too tired to pretend. You are the silent hands that keep the castle running. You are invisible when perfect, unforgivable when flawed, and replaceable always. The sad story of Margery Kemp between madness and mysticism. In the quiet market town of King's Lynn, Norfolk, circa 1373, Margery was born into a respected family. Her father, John Branham, is a prominent local official. He has served as mayor 5 times, and his status provides Margery with some social comfort. She's not poor, but she's not noble either. She stands somewhere in the middle, part of the growing merchant class of late medieval England. From the outside, her life seems predictable. She marries at around 20 years old to a man named John Kempe. Over the years, she will give birth to 14 children, although many of them will die young, as so many children did in that time. Her husband, though not cruel, is ordinary. Her town, though busy, is small. Her world is meant to be confined to hearth, home, and holy days. But Margery will not stay small. Something happens after the birth of her first child. Today, we might call it a postpartum breakdown, but in 14th century England, there was no vocabulary for depression, no diagnosis for trauma. What is known is that Margery begins to suffer terrifying visions. She sees devils mocking her. She believes she is damned. She tears at her skin. She howls. She will later describe it as a descent into dreadful temptation. Some feared she was possessed. Others believed she was mad. At the time, madness and sainthood often walked a narrow path. Women, especially, who stepped outside the expectations of obedience and silence, were labeled hysterical or dangerous. But after months of torment, something changes in Margery. She has a vision of Christ appearing to her in radiant white. He tells her she is forgiven. He speaks to her gently, lovingly. This moment becomes a pivot in her life, from despair to devotion. And so begins Margery's transformation into someone utterly unrecognizable in her own world. She begins to weep uncontrollably in public, not from sadness, but from spiritual ecstasy. When she hears a sermon about the crucifixion, she sobs as if she were standing at the foot of the cross. When she sees a child being baptized, she bursts into tears, overwhelmed by the symbol of salvation. Her weeping becomes a signature, loud, involuntary, and constant. To her neighbors, this behavior is scandalous. She's too emotional, too disruptive, too odd. They begin to call her names. They spit at her. They accuse her of hypocrisy, and worse, heresy. Women were not supposed to preach or speak with spiritual authority. Yet Margery, untrained and uninvited, dares to speak openly about her visions. She wears white, the color of chastity, and tells her husband that she no longer wishes to live as man and wife. She wants, instead, a celibate marriage, something highly unusual, especially for a mother of so many children. At first, John refuses, but eventually, they come to a private agreement. Margery will live in chastity, and John will let her go. And then, Margery goes. She travels. This is perhaps the most astonishing part of her story. In an age when most women never traveled more than a few miles from home, Margery sets out on pilgrimage after pilgrimage. She walks for weeks, sails across seas, sleeps in unfamiliar beds, eats strange food, suffers illness, insults, and loneliness. She goes to Canterbury, to York, to Rome, and even to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem itself. And all the while, she cries. She speaks of her visions. She finds herself tested by both illness and cruelty. Many of her companions abandon her along the way. Pilgrims complain that she talks too much. Priests refuse to let her speak. Locals shout at her in foreign languages. More than once, she's put on trial for heresy. In one town, she's brought before an archbishop. He demands that she stop preaching. He threatens her with imprisonment. Margery kneels and says calmly that she speaks only what God puts in her heart. She's released, and she continues. Despite her humble origins, she ends up speaking with bishops, abbots, and even the Archbishop of Canterbury. Her faith, strange and emotional as it is, can't be dismissed. She walks into rooms no one of her gender or class should have entered. And she is not afraid. But perhaps her greatest act of defiance isn't her weeping, or her preaching, or her travels. It's this. She decides to write it all down. Margery is not literate. Most women weren't. But she finds a scribe and begins dictating the story of her life. It takes years. The result is the Book of Margery Kempe, often called the first autobiography in the English language. It is messy, emotional, long-winded, and contradictory. It is also raw, honest, and full of aching vulnerability. She writes about her flaws, her doubts, Her arguments, her wanderings, her hunger to be close to God. She wants to be good, but she is never fully accepted, not by the church, not by the townspeople, not even by many of the priests she tries to speak with. And yet, through all of it, she insists on being seen. The church will never canonize Margery. She is not a saint. She dies quietly sometime in the 1440s, likely in her hometown. Her book is forgotten for centuries. But her words, so filled with pain, passion, and peculiar truth, survive. What makes Margery's story endure is not that she was extraordinary. It's that she was so human. She doubted. She longed. She lost children. She lost respect. She wandered. And she dared to believe that even a middle-class woman with no title, no education, and no permission could speak about the divine. Margery's voice, preserved across 600 years, is not easy to understand. Even in her own time, people called her strange. But for those who read her today, in the soft hours of the night, she offers something simple, even beautiful. An ordinary woman, weeping for the world, trying to find her place in something larger than herself. She did not vanish into silence. She left us her story. The mystery of the dancing plague, when the streets moved and no one knew why. Now, let us step into the strangest shadow of medieval Europe. Not a castle, not a battlefield, but a street. A quiet, cobbled lane in the heart of Strasbourg, nestled along the banks of the River Rhine. It is the year 1518. The sun rises over timber-framed houses and sleepy bakeries. Merchants open their stalls. Children sweep doorways. Chickens scratch the dusty alleys. The city, part of the Holy Roman Empire, is just emerging from yet another hot summer. But something strange is about to begin. A woman emerges from her home. She is not a noble, nor a servant. Her name, according to the records we have, is Frau Trophäa. Nothing more is known of her. No journal, no letters, no legacy. Only what comes next. She begins to dance. There is no music. There is no festival. Her arms jerk in strange rhythms. Her steps are uneven. Her eyes appear glazed, as though looking inward rather than out. Onlookers pause, puzzled. Is she drunk? Bewitched? Possessed? But Frau Trophäa does not stop. She dances for hours, not in circles of joy, not like the celebratory rounds of a harvest festival, but compulsively, feverishly, as if something inside her is commanding her to keep moving. Night falls. She collapses from exhaustion, sleeps briefly, then rises again to dance. And then, like ripples from a stone thrown into still water, others begin to join her. A few at first, then dozens. Then, over the course of days, more than 400 people are seized by the same strange affliction. Children, elders, housewives, merchants, even traveling laborers. They gather in the square, their bodies twisting, stamping, spinning, falling, and still no one can stop. The authorities are baffled. The clergy holds special masses. Physicians are summoned. None can explain it, and it only grows worse. What is to be done when hundreds of people are dancing, sweating, crying, shrieking, in unison, with no cause, no end? The Strasbourg City Council meets. They consult physicians, who suggest the cause is not spiritual, but bodily. perhaps a sickness of the blood, a hot imbalance of humors that must be exercised through movement. The dancers, they advise, must be allowed to continue. The only cure is to dance it out. And so the city builds a stage. They clear a space in the grain market. They hire musicians to accompany the afflicted. Drummers beat time. Fiddlers play jigs. Space is made to allow the bodies to move freely. But this decision, well-meaning though it may be, brings no peace. It brings more deaths. People begin collapsing. Some die of exhaustion. Some suffer heart attacks or strokes or break bones in their frenzy. Others are dragged away to rest, only to return to the square and begin again. The city's physicians reverse course. The problem, they say now, is not in the blood, but in the mind. The dancers must be removed, silenced, separated. It is too late. You may wonder, how do we know any of this happened? Could it not be rumor, legend, or exaggeration? But the dancing plague of 1518 is, in fact, very well documented. City records describe it. Local physicians wrote of it. Church chroniclers, often skeptical of superstition, describe it in matter-of-fact terms. Even modern academic journals have studied it at length. And remarkably, this was not the only such event. Other outbreaks of dancing mania were recorded as early as the 7th century, with notable cases in 1020, 1247, 1278, and 1374. Some took place in Germany, others in the Netherlands or Italy. The participants often claimed they could not stop themselves. In some cases, they claimed to see visions of saints, of demons, of holy or blasphemous things. In 1374, dancers in Aachen cried out the names of devils as they spun. It happened often enough that it became a known phenomenon. Priests called it Chorea Sancti Vitae, Saint Vitus's dance, believing it to be a form of spiritual possession or punishment. Saint Vitus, a martyr from the early Christian centuries, was often invoked in healing rituals for those afflicted. So what was it? Modern historians and scientists have proposed several theories over the past few decades. None are definitive. Each has supporters and critics. One theory is ergotism, caused by a hallucinogenic mold called Claviceps purpurea that grows on rye during warm, damp summers. This fungus contains chemicals related to LSD. Those who consumed infected grain might experience hallucinations, seizures, convulsions, or crawling skin sensations. It's a tempting theory. Ergotism can cause delusions. It was blamed, too, for episodes of hysteria, such as the Salem witch trials. But it has flaws. Ergot typically affects isolated individuals, not large groups dancing together in rhythm. And the symptoms, convulsions, pain, gangrene, don't match the rhythmic, almost ritual movement described in 1518. Another theory is mass psychogenic illness, what we might call mass hysteria today. In times of extreme stress, fear, or trauma, people can begin to experience shared physical symptoms without a physical cause. Think of fainting spells in school assemblies, or phantom illness in factory workers. This theory fits well. Strasbourg in 1518 was under enormous pressure. The region had recently suffered famine. Plague outbreaks were still common. The political situation in the Holy Roman Empire was unstable. Life was hard, food scarce, death frequent. Perhaps the dancers were expressing a kind of collective release, an embodied anxiety that no words could explain. Other historians suggest religious or cultural trauma. Medieval Europe was steeped in superstition. People believed deeply in spirits, curses, saints, and signs. If someone claimed to be cursed, others might believe it and feel it physically. A single act of madness, like Frau Troffea's first dance, could have triggered fear, imitation, and belief. Or perhaps it was something else entirely, something we still don't understand. The Strasbourg outbreak eventually burned itself out. The dancers either died, were isolated, or recovered. Records become quieter. The summer passed. The afflicted dwindled, and life returned to something like normal. The stage was dismantled, the musicians sent home, the square swept clean. But for years afterward, the memory lingered. What had happened in those haunted weeks? Why had so many people danced against their will, some to the point of death? Even today, scholars revisit the event. Articles are written, documentaries are filmed. The dancing plague becomes again and again a kind of mirror for our own anxieties. In times of war, famine, and fear, how much of the body's suffering comes from the mind? The image remains vivid. Imagine the dusty square beneath Strasbourg's cathedral. Imagine torches flickering as dusk settles. Dozens of villagers, some barefoot, others in wooden shoes, turning, stamping, arms flailing, faces anguished, as flutes and drums echo off stone. No joy, no rest, just motion, relentless motion. Was it madness? Was it trauma? Was it something beyond explanation? Or was it perhaps a cry, the body's desperate cry when the heart cannot find peace? Inside the life of a feudal lord, duty, dread, and the heavy crown of landed power. Let's close our eyes and slip into a different kind of discomfort. Not that of the servant, but of the man who owns the land, the stone, and the responsibility. It's easy to imagine a medieval lord as a man of wealth, wrapped in furs, seated beside a roaring fire, a goblet of wine in one hand and a roasted game hen in the other. But power in the 1300s was rarely restful, and luxury, more often than not, came tightly wound with fear. Imagine yourself now not as the one fetching buckets from the well, but the one who owns the well, the fields around it, the homes that line your domain. You are a feudal lord, and everything the light touches is not just yours, it is your burden. You rise before the sun, your breath hanging in the air of your chamber. There is no central heating here, no soft mattress of goose feathers. You awaken to the chill of damp stone and the heavy scent of burning peat. The fire may have burned low in the night, but your obligations have not. The steward has already left his daily reports outside your door. They are short, written in rough Latin, and yet they contain everything that will determine the fate of your household. The yield from your barley fields has dropped. One of your oxen died of hoof rot. 2 villagers were caught stealing apples from the orchard. You'll need to hear their cases today. But it's not just the peasants you must worry about. There are taxes due to your overlord, the duke, or perhaps the king himself. And coin is always tight. You don't farm. You don't mine. You rely on others to do that for you. And they, in turn, rely on you for protection, for justice, and for order. If there's unrest in the village, it's your fault. If there's hunger among the poor, their eyes turn to you. If war breaks out, your banner is expected on the field, and quickly. This is not just ownership. It is constant management, a balancing act of politics, morality, and fear. Later that morning, you take your place in the manorial court, a vaulted chamber with a stone floor and high windows that never quite seem to let in enough warmth. Villagers come before you, hats in hand, eyes low. They speak of wandering pigs that destroyed a neighbor's crops, of disputes over the size of dowries, of children injured in disputes over borrowed tools. Your job? Judge, jury, and often executioner. You listen, nod, weigh the reputations of those involved, their past disputes, their usefulness to your estate. You issue fines, rarely coin, for coin is rare, but often bushels of grain or days of unpaid labor. To rule justly is difficult. To rule unfairly is dangerous. You are not beloved. You are obeyed. And that is a lonely thing. You walk the ramparts in the afternoon, your cloak billowing in the wind. The castle is secure for now, but security is always temporary. Beneath you, the blacksmith hammers iron into horseshoes. The stonemason complains about cracks forming in the outer walls. The cook is short on salt and meat for the winter stores. And then there is war. If your overlord calls, you must ride. You must summon your household knights, your trained men-at-arms. You must arm them, feed them, and sometimes watch them die in the mud, not for your cause, but for a crown's ambition far beyond your own. Even when peace reigns, you prepare for siege. You store salted meat, barley, hard cheese, and barrels of mead in the undercroft. You inspect the well to ensure it is not poisoned. You check that the murder holes above the gate are clear, that boiling oil could flow freely, should it come to that. And when the sun sets behind the battlements, and you sit at your table once again, your stomach full and your eyes heavy, you do not rest easily, because across the land, another castle may envy your holdings, because within your own walls, a servant may resent your rule, and because disease does not knock politely. In the 14th century, all your wealth, your stone walls, your guards, your prayers, none of it protects you from the Black Death. It comes silently. First, a stable boy coughs blood. Then the cook's assistant complains of aching limbs and boils beneath the arm. By the week's end, 3 peasants are buried. By the month's end, 20. You order quarantines. You forbid travel. You pray. You send offerings to the church. None of it works. The plague kills your villagers, then your groomsmen, then your steward, and then your child. Even now, in your power, you are helpless. The halls grow silent. The chapel bells toll more often. You begin to consider things you never imagined, that God is punishing you, that your family is cursed, that all the silver in your vault cannot buy safety. And when the rats scurry in the night, you wonder if you'll wake tomorrow. The Lord's power means nothing to death. And after the plague, nothing is the same. Your fields lie fallow. Your laborers are dead. The peasants that remain begin to speak differently. They know you need them now. They ask for wages, They talk of other lords, ones who offer coin, better homes, even freedom. The social order begins to crack, and suddenly, you are not just a man with a title. You are a man negotiating, pleading, bending, in a way your father never would have. You marry your daughters not to noble blood, but to merchant sons. You sell off land, little by little. You ride into the village and find the chapel empty. Something has shifted. Your castle still stands. The banners still fly. But the world you ruled is already half gone. So now, as you sit by your fire, older than you ever imagined you'd live to be, and far lonelier than you expected, you wonder, was this power? Was this worth it? Because to be a feudal lord in the 1300s wasn't about comfort or control. It was about constant weight, a burden pressed into your shoulders every waking moment. You may have lived in stone, but you were never truly safe. You may have ruled others, but you were never truly free. And as the fire dims and your steward's footsteps echo in the hall, you remember the truth that perhaps every lord learns too late. Even in command, you are always answering to something larger than yourself. The castle kitchen, heat, grease, and endless bread. Forget the banquets above the roasted swans on silver platters, the gilded goblets of wine, and the plump nobles lounging on cushioned benches. That's the show. Today, we step behind the curtain. We descend the uneven stone stairs to where the real work happens, the castle kitchen, a place of fire, fatigue, and food. Not food as we imagine it, not elegant pastries or delicate confections, but haunches of half-thawed meat, sour bread, and barrels of ale more sludge than drink. Let's begin your day as one of the nameless, sleepless servants in the kitchen of a 14th century fortress. The kitchen, like the rest of the castle, does not sleep. Even before the sun glimmers behind the cold stone towers, smoke is already curling through the chimney shafts. You, the kitchen servant, have been awake for hours. You dress in yesterday's clothes. There are no fresh ones, and your wool tunic still smells of yesterday's lard. Your hands are calloused, the tips of your fingers cracked from cold and work. Before anything else, you must get the fires going. You head into the smoky chamber. The great hearth, a blackened maw cut into the stone wall, is cold now. Damp logs hiss when you lay them on yesterday's coals. With luck, the embers are still alive. If not, you'll waste precious time striking flint, shielding the spark with trembling hands, coaxing flame from straw. No fire means no food, and no food means punishment from above. When the fire finally crackles to life, it fills the room with flickering orange, and the day begins in earnest. Your first task is gutting fish. They arrive in woven baskets, slippery eels, gray river perch, or salted cod brought up from barrels. They stink. Scales stick to your skin. Your knife is dull. You don't complain. Other servants are grinding barley in the hand mill, hour after hour, hunched over the grindstone, turning it with raw palms. The sound is rhythmic, endless, and never enough. Someone is already boiling oats in the cauldron, stirring with a paddle that's taller than a man. In one corner, a boy is plucking a dozen hens. Feathers drift like dust. In another, the master cook shouts at a girl for not rinsing the herbs. He's old, missing 3 fingers, and keeps a wooden spoon on his belt like a weapon. You don't want his attention. There's no silence, ever. Wooden spoons scraping copper pots, cleavers hitting bone, barked orders, footsteps, coughing, hissing, always the hissing. Come midday, the real madness begins. The kitchen serves everyone in the castle, from the lord and lady to the guards, squires, monks, and musicians. Sometimes over 200 mouths to feed. On feast days, double that. The ovens glow with heat. A spit turns slowly over the hearth, speared with a dripping boar, basted in vinegar and herbs meant to mask the rot. Rats scurry through the rushes on the floor, stealing crumbs if you're not quick enough to stomp them. There's bread everywhere. Round loaves cooling on racks, flat loaves stacked in crates, coarse brown loaves for the servants, fine white ones, rare and expensive for the Lord's table. Bread is the one thing you must always have. Always. You ladle pottage into bowls. You boil cabbages, slice leeks, and mash turnips. You sweat through your tunic. Your hands are sticky with grease and onion skins. Your eyes water from smoke. You've not eaten since dawn, and you won't taste a single dish you've helped make. Why? Because food prepared by the lower servants is for others. To taste it is theft. You might steal a crust if no one's watching, or lick the back of your hand for flavor. But never more. That would be punished harshly. The kitchen is not clean, not as we understand it. There's no soap. Water comes from the same well used by horses. Vermin are constant companions. The grain sacks are never safe. Mice chew through them. Weevils dance in the flour. To mask the scent of questionable meat, you douse it in spices, if there are any. Pepper, ginger, cloves, precious and costly, kept under lock and key by the master cook. Most days, it's vinegar, mustard seeds, or onions, anything to hide the smell of decay. And yet, people still get sick, badly sick. Guests vanish after meals. A knight spends the night clutching his gut. A maid dies after eating soft cheese in the summer. No one blames the kitchen. No one questions it. That's just life in the castle. When a feast is ordered, perhaps a visiting noble, or a wedding, or a new alliance, the kitchen becomes a battlefield. Swan, served whole and stuffed with herbs. Roasted peacocks with feathers reattached for display. Spiced wine, rabbit pies, marzipan castles. Everything must be perfect. You shine pewter plates with cloth soaked in sand. You carry trays upstairs, arms shaking. Drop nothing, spill nothing, speak nothing. Above, they toast and laugh. Below, you return to the boiling pots, aching and unseen. When the last tray is washed with gritty water, when the fire is reduced to glowing coals, you slump on a bench. If you're lucky, there's a crust of bread left, maybe a ladle of pottage, thick with cabbage. You eat in silence. The others are too tired to speak. Your hands smell of garlic and smoke. Your tunic is stiff with sweat. Your shoes are soaked from the rushes. You have burned your palms again. Sleep comes on a straw mat beside the hearth, or sometimes in the pantry, curled beside the sacks of barley. It's never enough, because in a few hours, someone will shout your name. Someone will demand the fire, the bread, the meat. The kitchen never sleeps. You are not a knight. You are not a lady. You are not even a chambermaid. You are the cook's boy, the fish girl, the onion peeler. You are smoke and sweat and aching bones. But without you, the castle starves. Without you, there is no feast, no bread, no glory. They may not see you, but your hands are everywhere. The fire, the flesh, the flour, the hunger. The plague doctor's lament, life on the front lines of death. Imagine this. It is the spring of 1348, and the world is not as it once was. The bells no longer chime only for Mass, they toll for the dead, again and again. The sky hangs gray with smoke and sorrow. You are no noble, no priest, no peasant. You are something in between. You are a plague doctor. The name sounds official. Perhaps it brings to mind a man of medicine, schooled in Galenic humors and trained in the healing arts. But in truth, you are not a learned physician. You are a desperate man with a borrowed robe and a city contract to tend to the dying for a fee. Yes, but with little real hope of success. You may have once been a barber surgeon, a clerk, or a scholar fallen on hard times. Now, you walk the streets between the worlds of the living and the dead. You awaken in a rented room that reeks faintly of vinegar and mold. The shutter is closed tight, yet still the smell of death seeps through the cracks in the wood. The air is thick with dampness, and each breath feels like it might carry something foul. You do not eat. Appetite has long since fled. Your first ritual is dressing. The robe is heavy, thick, and waxed with tallow to repel the bad air, the miasma believed to carry death on the wind. It clings to your frame like armor, but it cannot protect your soul. The gloves are stiff, the boots pinch, and then comes the mask. Ah, the mask. Made of leather, stitched tight around the eyes. It features a long, hollow beak stuffed with dried flowers, spices, and pungent herbs. Lavender, mint, cloves, maybe even a bit of camphor, if you can find it. Not for vanity, not for decoration. It is believed this cone of scent will filter out the death that rides invisible in the breeze. You strap it on. You are no longer yourself. You are the doctor now. The beak, the robes, the gloves, this is your shield, your symbol, and your sentence. Your first visit is a poor family near the southern gate. The mother has tied a white cloth to the doorpost, a quiet sign to the neighbors that someone inside is ill. You enter without knocking. Inside, it is dark. The shutters are closed. The rushes on the floor smell of urine and rot, and 3 children lie on the pallet. Their faces blotched with blackened boils. The mother kneels beside them, eyes swollen from crying, her voice hoarse from prayer. She begs you to help, but what can you offer? You carry a cane, not to aid your walking, but to prod the sick from a distance. You carry a satchel with dried herbs, some honey, perhaps a vial of vinegar. You carry charms, perhaps, items handed to you by desperate clergy, pieces of parchment scrawled with blessings or psalms. You look at the children. Their breathing is shallow, their skin hot to the touch. You do not need to examine them closely. You know the signs. They will not see the next dawn. You offer the mother a clove to chew, and tell her to burn rosemary if she has it. She does not. You place a sprig of dried sage near the children's heads. She offers you coin, 2 thin pennies, her last. You refuse. What would be the point? You step outside. You make a mark on the door with a bit of chalk. You move on. There are moments of silence in the day. Not peace, but the kind of silence that hums with dread. You walk through the town square. Shops are closed. Markets are shuttered. The well is deserted. The dog howls in the distance, alone, and the echo seems to stretch for miles. You pass a cart. It is piled high with oddies, some wrapped, some not. The cartman does not meet your eye. He has seen too much. His shovel is slick with blood and mud. The gravediggers are behind schedule. They always are. In the churchyard, the ground is soft and overused. Graves are shallow now. No one remembers the names of the dead. The priests say a few quick words, Latin murmurs swallowed by the wind. There is no time for eulogies, no time for grief. You take a seat near the well. You remove your gloves. Your hands are pale, pruned from sweat, trembling slightly. You try not to think of your own family. You have not seen them in weeks. You breathe in the stale air. Somewhere nearby, another bell tolls, another soul lost. In the afternoon, you are summoned to a merchant's home. Fine stone walls, carved beams, silk tapestries. The house smells of incense and fever. The merchant himself is already dead, his face contorted, jaw frozen in terror. His wife lies beside him, unconscious. A servant begs you to save the children. Upstairs, in a room with painted saints and ivory statues, you find 2 girls curled together in a canopied bed. One is quiet. The other moans softly, her eyes rolling. You give them vinegar to sip. You speak softly, though you are not sure they hear you. You light a candle and place it on the windowsill. You know that, for them, this house is a tomb. As you leave, the servant offers you gold. You take 1 coin. You will use it to pay for more herbs. It will not be enough. As the sun sinks below the rooftops, the streets fill with smoke, not from hearths or kitchens, but from the burning of linens, clothing, straw beds. Anything touched by the dying must be destroyed. You see a group of monks carrying a crucifix. Their robes are torn, their feet bare. They chant as they walk, striking themselves with leather cords. They call for repentance, for mercy, for an end. You say nothing. Your body is tired. Your mind is numb. You feel like a ghost in your own skin. You return to your chamber. You strip off the robe, the mask, the gloves. You wash your hands with vinegar and rose water. The sting reminds you you're still alive. You open your journal. You write, visited 12 homes, 6 children dead, 3 women dying, 1 merchant's house emptied. The bells did not stop today. You set the pen down. You close your eyes. You do not cry. Not anymore. Being a plague doctor is not heroism. It is endurance. It is the quiet commitment to walk where others will not, to touch the untouchable, to bear witness to a city unraveling. You are not thanked. You are not trusted. You are often feared. You are a walking omen in the eyes of those who survive. Your appearance brings dread. Children hide. Adults avert their eyes. You do not belong to the world of the living or the dead. You move between them. At night, you dream of bells. You dream of fire. You dream of your mask lying on the ground, broken. You wake, and the work begins again. Tonight, we didn't ride in on horseback or dine beneath golden chandeliers. We walked barefoot through the cold corridors of forgotten lives. We rose before dawn with the servants, wept beside a woman haunted by visions, danced until collapse with those who could not stop, and sat silently in the great hall, wearing the burden of power and plague. Beneath the banners and marble lies the dust of real lives, frayed, flickering, and human. History isn't just in books or grand battles. It's in the soot under fingernails, in the whispered prayers no one recorded, in the aching silences that linger long after the page is turned. So as you drift into sleep, know this: the past never truly rests. It waits, quietly, behind every stone, every story, and every sigh. Thank you for walking beside me through the echoes. Until next time, sleep well.